My next guest says that the White House's response to the protests in China is pure cowardice. I want to bring in Republican Congressman from Texas, Dan Crenshaw. Congressman, it's always good to see you, sir. And I do want to ask you about this because it doesn't seem like the Biden administration really has the back of the Chinese people who are fighting for their freedom. They are fighting for their voice. And the military in China seems bent on really doing some true damage to these people.
Yeah, and look, and the cowardice comes from lack of action. And this is a trend with the Biden administration. Like you saw protests in Cuba. What did Biden do? He did nothing. He said nothing. In fact, one of the chants by Cuban protesters was "Donde está Biden?" because they never heard anything from him. The same thing with Venezuelans. Same thing with Iranians. He's not a fighter for freedom. He is not showing or leading America to the best of ourselves, which is this shining city on the hill where people look to us for moral certitude. They look to us for inspiration, for freedom, for their fight. And they're not asking for much, right? They're just asking for some recognition. They're asking for some moral support. And you can't even do that with China, our major adversary. Let's not forget, too, this administration actually undermined the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, when she went to Taiwan. And good for her for going. But the administration itself said, oh, you know what, we don't think that's a good idea. I don't know why they have such a soft spot for China, but this is something we're going to hold them accountable for when we retake the majority next year.
Yeah, no, well, that was my question to you, was why has the Biden administration been so weak when it comes to China policy? We know that Xi Jinping is a brutal dictator. It's becoming very clear what their strategy is going to be, and we've heard that from many Chinese nationals here in this country. I want to move back to this country now and talk about the border and this seeming misspeak from the president and Karine Jean-Pierre. I mean, she makes it sound like the president has been to the border. Well, we have no record that President Biden has been to the border. What do you make of that?
Well, she's a liar. She's an absolute liar. He has never been to the border. Kamala Harris has been to the border once. She's the border czar. She might be referring to one time Biden drove by El Paso when he was campaigning for Obama in 2008. That's the latest record we have of Biden even coming close to the border. It is worth noting that many Republicans have invited Biden to the border. You can come see it. You can come understand the problem for yourself. But he doesn't care. In fact, he's facilitating this entire thing. It's a real problem. And it's also worth noting, since we're talking about China and the border, there's another connection here. The Chinese, and this continues to need to be said, the Chinese are sending the chemical components for fentanyl to Mexico. They are processed by the cartels in Mexico, and they are shipped across our border here, and they're poisoning our people. Nearly 80,000 Americans a year are dying because of what China is doing through the Mexican cartels. That's why I've been so focused on this issue with the cartels and China.
What are your discussions now with soon-to-be House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy? He went down to the border, strong show of support, said that they want to bring in maybe the U.S. military down to the border. Maybe that's an answer. You yourself served our country. Thank you for your service. What do you make of these plans that seem to be coming together under Leader McCarthy?
Yeah, there needs to be a whole of government approach. A couple of weeks ago, I introduced a bill called the Declaring War on the Cartels Act. So the name says a lot, I think, right? And that would increase penalties. It would increase authorities and tools for us to go after all aspects of the cartel, their finances, their liberty, everything. And to include sanctioning Mexican officials, government officials that aid and abet them, which, by the way, is a lot of them. We need to leverage the Mexican government. And it's worth noting that AMLO refused to come to Biden's Summit of the Americas. Why did he do that? Because he thinks Biden is weak, because Biden keeps acting weak, because Biden keeps acting like he doesn't care about our own security. He keeps acting like he doesn't care about the freedom of people around the world. And then he says America's back, right? He says, oh, you know, America's back. We're leading again. You know what he really means by that? He means holding a lobster dinner for the French president. That's what he means by that. His actions are very different. This isn't that hard, right? Just stand up for your border, stand up for America, stand up for freedom around the world, and let's get some things done.
The House controls the purse strings, Congressman. More funding. There's an answer, right?
Well, we'll be definitely adding a lot of what the Border Patrol needs. We're going to look into, again, like a joint interagency task force, a whole of government approach to targeting the cartels directly, and more authorities to do so. And if that includes the military, that includes the military. That is the kind of conversation that we need to be having.
And you would support that? Okay. All right. Well, Congressman, it's great to have you here. Of course, talking about so many things that are happening around the world. Congressman Dan Crenshaw, thank you, sir.